Hello again. I'm out on the Gold Creek Pond Loop Trail looking for a place to set up and do a quick oil painting. It's a hot summer day, late July. Thought I'd run up to the mountains to enjoy this beautiful weather, get away from the heat for a little while. It's warm up here, but not too bad, especially not in the shade. This is a new area to me. Now I've painted that peak from Lake Chechelas in the winter, did a snow hike and did a snow painting. I think this might be a beautiful place to come back to in the winter as well. Crystal clear water. Very cold water. You get those fighter jets screaming through the Cascades on training or something. It's kind of jarring when you're out in the wilderness on a hike and you get a screaming jet flying overhead, but it's pretty impressive. This is gorgeous across here. Lots of greens, but there's an underlying red and yellow. I think I'll hike around the pond before I make up my mind. Beautiful, well-maintained trail around the little pond. There are a few mosquitoes right now too. This is a new camera. It's a Sony ZV-1, I think. I had an RX 100 5A, which was a good camera, but I think it was just getting a little old. It would overheat, and then the USB charging port stopped working. That's a beautiful view there. So green though. It would be, I think, a challenge to make a strong composition with so many strong greens. Well, anyway, with this new camera, trying it out in 4K, see how that works. It may not last just filming me painting for extended periods. I've heard they get hot, especially in the sun. Here's the scene I'm going to paint. I really just love the colors and the shapes in this scene. That beautiful phthalo blue, turquoise water with the rough scrub in the foreground, beautiful yellow, a lot of red along the bank, and then these dark shadow trees. Got a 9x12 inch oil primed linen panel. This is a Gorilla Painter panel. Decent quality, pretty affordable. I realize this dappled light from the leaves overhead is not going to make for a great video. Hopefully the sun moves a bit and I get either some more consistent light or some more consistent shade where what I'm doing is picked up by the camera, but I'll do the best I can. Quick rundown on my palette. I've got Artist Turpentine in here. I'll use this for the initial sketch and the initial turpentine wash. Got a nice breeze coming off the pond, so it'll take the fumes away from me. It is hot today, but it's kind of cool here in the shade, so I don't like to use turpentine when I'm getting too hot or when the air is real still, because it can make me a little bit woozy. Got that Neil McGilp in here, Gambling medium. I'll put a little bit of Gamsol in here. I'll put the cap on the turpentine when I'm done with the wash and get Gamsol out. Ivory black, Rembrandt cold gray, titanium white, cerulean blue, phthalo blue, ultramarine blue, sap green, burnt umber, burnt sienna, alizarin crimson, cad red, cad yellow, Windsor lemon, and yellow ochre. So most of my usual plein air colors. I'm going to start by sketching the scene on the panel. I want to place this tree on this left-hand 1/3 vertical line, and I'll probably place this warm burnt sienna brown kind of vegetation under the pond, under the water of the pond at this upper 1/3 line. So this pond bank, it's actually a little spit of land that goes out into the pond. That'll be close to the top of the panel. So I want this big turquoise, beautiful, it's a hard color to describe, I guess, because it ranges from a deeper blue, ultramarine blue at some points. It's reflecting some cobalt blue from the sky. There's some yellow tones from the sand under the water. There's red tones from the vegetation under the water. All those colors are coming together as one big kind of jade green or emerald green. It's a hard color to describe, but it's really beautiful. And I really like how this tree is just a shadow against that strongly lit background. I think that'll be fun to paint. But I want to capture some of the shapes and tones in this shadow. I don't want it to just be a black silhouette. So that'll be part of the challenge, is going dark enough here that the scene reads that this is a foreground in shadow, and really pump up the intensity of this background. So I'll go in with burnt sienna and do the sketch. Turpentine wash, I'll probably go with Windsor lemon or yellow ochre for this area, burnt sienna for this area. Wipe out most of this where it's really lit, and then burnt umber for the tree itself. Maybe throw a little bit of alizarin crimson as well in the foreground. Maybe even a little bit of burnt sienna as well in the foreground to keep it coming forward. I want to spend some time on the turpentine wash today. I want the initial wash to be a pretty strong representation of what I'm seeing there. So after I get the initial wash down and wipe out the lightest lights, then I may spend just a little bit of time adding back a little bit more paint, straight paint from the tube without mixing it, just to bump up some of the shadow areas and some of the intense colors.
Hello.
Alright, there's the turpentine wash in. I played with adding some dark after wiping away the lightest lights. It's a little hard to tell what's going on with the strong dappled light on the panel. I can see it pretty well here, but I know on the video that light is really washed out. So now I'll start to mix up the full colors. Just hold my knife out in a little patch of sun if I can and match it to the colors I'm seeing in the scene. Scene's changing pretty fast now with these tall trees. It's throwing shadows on different places, so I need to move pretty quickly. Got some colors mixed up here. I've got some blue grays and some green grays for the distant background hills. Got some color for the water and for the trees on that little spit of land. These are the trees on that far background hill as well. I've got some colors for the scrubby brush and the banks of the pond. Then I've got the foreground shadow here, blue, brown, green, red, and then lighter tones for the foreground, bark, dusty pathway, and then some greens for the foliage in the foreground and on the bank as it recedes away. I think this time I'll start with what's drawing me the most to the scene, which is the water. So I'm going to take a fairly big, take this fairly large evergreen, number 7. It's maybe 3/4 of an inch wide. Dip it in just a little bit of Gamsol first, and I'm going to paint the pond. That's what's really drawing me to the scene. What I'm trying to capture in the scene is the beautiful clarity and shallow bottom of that pond and all the different shades and shapes in that beautiful pond, and then also get a feeling of how cool and nice it feels here in the shade of the trees. I can do that, I think, by capturing a strong value contrast and keeping the far background kind of cool, the middle ground really high value and strong yellows and spots, and then the foreground warm browns in the shade. there's the lake water mostly in. Now I'm going to add a real high value yellow ochre tone for this highest value portion of the painting, and then I'll go into painting background, bank of trees and this scrubby area, and then finally I'll paint the foreground. Alright, there's the pond and the background scrub brush and some of the foreground scrub brush that was in sunlight when I first started in. Now I will paint the foreground and the tree, and I may use a palette knife a little bit to get some of the pine boughs that are in shadow, just to I'll take a little bit of dark paint and drag it down across there just to get a little bit of dark paint to stick to this light paint. If I'm careful, it can work. I'll go in with the palette knife too and draw in some of the finer branches as well. Use this larger number 7 rosemary, a nice clean brush, and go in the darks first. Now the light on the pine trees has changed quite a bit. I'm not going to react to that too much. I may add some of the dappled light that's on those pine tree trunks now. But I liked the effect I was getting earlier where there was warm and cool, mostly dark trees in front of that brilliant light background. This is all the same value, so I can vary the temperature within this value for interest and to suggest form. I'm wetting my brush with just a little bit of Gamsol. That is allowing me to easily carve into the layer of wet paint I have down. I don't want these branches to directly parallel this bank or this bank, so I'm trying to fit them in. And I don't need many. I don't have to add many to get the picture, to get the message across. I just want to add a few of these branches as gestures for now, thick and thin. They don't have to be completed lines. They don't have to all match up to anything in particular. As I'm looking at them here in person, most of the branches are coming out, they droop, and then curve back up at various angles. And I just don't want all of them to be the same thickness or all of them to be the same color, the same value. Some of these in the background, well, let me do a foreground. These in the foreground are going to be a little thicker and a little darker. Some in the background will be a little thinner and a little lighter, and maybe a little bluer as they curve away from us, and might exaggerate that just a little bit to try to help the illusion that some of these branches are in the background and some are in the foreground. There are some that are coming down and ending as well, and some are catching some light. So I have to make a decision. Do I want some of these catching light, or do I want to keep them all in shadow like they were when I first got here? It's always a challenge and a little bit of a gamble. Now I'll take my palette knife and do a couple. Palette knife gives a nice, very thin line, and can also do some random things that may or may not work. So if you put a stroke down and you don't like it, you can always correct it now or later. Just playing with putting a little bit of light on the trunks, seeing how that reads, and a little bit of light on some of these branches. Right now I'll take my smaller palette knife and just dab in a little bit of green foliage. Oh, I think I want to put in a couple branches first for the green foliage on the ground. Always takes a bit of courage to cover up what you did in the background with your foreground. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And here I want this a little bluer, but not lighter. So I'm going to reuse some of the colors I mixed for the far background to blue it down, gray it out just a little bit. Here's where it ended up. A little 9x12 inch oil on panel. Light changed quite a bit while I was here. A lot more light on the trees and on the foreground now. But I tried to stay with what I initially saw in the scene, what I really liked in the scene. That kind of abstract, hazy emerald green of the pond. Yeah, a beautiful way to spend a hot day out on the trail doing a plein air painting. Thanks so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. If you like these videos, please like and subscribe. Leave me a comment below, share, and I'll see you in the next one. If you'd like to support the channel, please visit my website. I sell these little plein air pieces at a reasonable price because I consider them practice. It really makes me happy when someone likes my art enough that they want to hang it in their home. You can also sign up for my newsletter and stay up to date on my new work and shows and get a discount on original art and prints.